Hey everybody, welcome to our downtown studios. This is Fight News Now. I'm John Ramdeen. He is Robin Black. And coming up this Saturday night, the O2 Arena in London, England will play host to Bellator 158. The main event, it's a good one, 170 pounds. The hard-hitting Brit Paul Daley in action against the former Bellator champion, tremendous fighter in Douglas Lima. And we all know what Paul Daley brings to the table. He's got dynamite or Semtex in his hands and in his low kicks. However, Douglas Lima also has explosive power in his hands and in his kicks. We saw that in his fight with Rick Hahn. I think this is one of the most underrated fighters in all of mixed martial arts. Right now, I think he's 14-2 in his previous 16 fights. His only loss is coming to Ben Askren and Andrei Koreshkov. That's the last time we saw him in action about a year ago, and we all saw what happened when the former lightweight champion Ben Henderson came to Bellator and battled Andrei Koreshkov. Douglas Lima is legit.
Yes, he is. Do you want to put a bet on which guy is going to shoot a takedown? Because one of them's gonna.
I would think Paul Daley.
Yeah, you think?
Why not?
Well, the point comes in a fight between guys like this where you just have to make something different happen. You just have to confuse the situation, make the other guy think about it. And somebody in this fight, somebody in round one shoots a takedown because it's the smart thing to do.
But there's ego always involved in this game as well. And
that's what's going to make this a fun fight.
And that's when we look at Bellator, I think everybody recognizes that the UFC is the #1 organization in the world.
Who says?
I think we say.
4 billion
exactly.
Reasons, sure.
But I think one of the reasons why is they look at mixed martial arts as much as it's entertainment, it's also a sport, and they're trying to promote the sport of mixed martial arts. As much as Bellator is also the sport of mixed martial arts, the emphasis is on entertainment, and that's what it comes down to. Make sure the fans at the O2 Arena and watching around the world, none of these guys are really world-ranked guys, but it doesn't matter. Come out, put on a show, build the fan base.
I'll tell you, in London, Paul Daley's a ranked guy. Do you know what I mean? Like in London, that is the main event. They're nailing it with this one. It's also on a weekend where there is no UFC. I mean, as soon as we started talking about it in the office, like, oh yeah, we'll spend our night watching Paul Daley fight Douglas Lima. It's an action fight. It's a fun fight. When I had Dan Hardy on doing a tandem breakdown, we were talking about power, and he just out of nowhere brings up Paul Daley, who he trained with for many years, and he's like, he just always generated that kind of power. Just that. And Pete, you've heard that a lot of times, and there's certain myths that we repeat when the people that came before us used to say. And one of those things where you question whether or not it was a myth is power is born, it's God-given, it's one of these things, you can't develop it. And you start to look into that. You start to myth-buster it. Is that a myth? And it can be, because there are people who absolutely generate power. But then there are also these people who make that not a myth. They bust that myth. Paul Daley's one of those guys. Dan said he showed up at the gym and he just generated power. It's just in how his body is created.
When you look at a main event like this, for Douglas Lima, he has to go out there and look spectacular if he wants to get big fights. I mean, Paul Daley is an action fighter. I think that's what a lot of people anticipate from Paul Daley. He's, of course, trying to create interest. I think he stepped away from the whole Josh Koscheck thing because, as you pointed out, I don't know if this guy wants to come to the #2 organization and face guys that could be taking out guys in the top 10. Now, I understand Josh Koscheck. Is he going to come back to mixed martial arts? He may, but right now it seems that feud's kind of over.
You Freudian slipped to Josh Thompson a bit. And these are two great fighters, great proven veterans. They've accomplished everything they need to accomplish. But did they come here to fight Michael Chandler and Paul Daley? Was this a move where it's like, we're going to pay a significant amount of money and you're going to have fights that are less damaging to your body, less challenging as you get older, and both of those gentlemen have earned them. And then all of a sudden it's like, you got Mike Chandler and you got Paul Daley. You know what? My back has been killing me. I would have fought a lower level guy, but I'm not fighting Paul Daley with a nagging injury. That's not what I came here to do.
Now, was it just a misconception because we saw the Bellator debut not that long ago for Matt Mitrione, who made the jump from the UFC over to Bellator, and again, people feel, oh yeah, this guy's going to squash the competition. Yes, he got the stoppage victory in his debut, but he was in a world of trouble. So Manatafa landed a big shot that sent him to the ground, And there are a lot of referees out there that would have stepped in and stopped that fight.
And there are a lot of people there who don't think he should be fighting this soon after. Yeah. And that's easy to feel. Your feeling is, how can a guy fight after that? But the reason there are commissions and the reason they scan the brain and do all these comprehensive tests is to prove it, because, hey man, you can be Ronda Rousey, and are you okay 2 years later? Are you okay 3 days later? It's the science that proves whether or not you're okay, and this guy's cleared to fight. I think Matt Mitrione is the perfect example of a guy who's perfect there. He's always valued attention. Yeah. As most of us do in sort of a time where we get paid by the amount of clicks you get on things, the amount of people who click like on stuff. Matt Mitrione values that kind of attention. Now he commentates. Now he's a big name in the heavyweight division there. This is a perfect move for Matt Mitrione.
However, his opponent, Ollie Thompson, veteran of the Ultimate Fighting Championship, you and I called his fights in KSW. It seems that Bellator has the same mentality as both the UFC and KSW. Yes, we'll pay you, but we're going to give you big fights. Yeah. So you have to perform if you want to continue to get big paydays here.
If you're Ollie Thompson and you're looking at it, where do you not want to be with Matt Mitrione? I mean, nowhere's really all that great. If Matt Mitrione hits you, if he chokes you, but really don't want to be underneath him.
Yeah.
I mean, can you imagine being underneath Matt Mitrione when he's got that ornery streak, when his confidence is inflated as he keeps you down there and starts hurting you? So we got to move our feet. We got to make Matt Mitrione chase. And but that's a great fight. Ollie Thompson in KSW, we had a great time calling his fights, and he has looked good.
And you see the two fights, the main event, as I mentioned, Paul Daley and Lima, and now this fight with Mitrione. You anticipate fireworks. You anticipate a finish to thrill the fans, but I don't know if any fight is going to be able to thrill the fans like the co-featured bout. Michael Page, kind of one of the future stars, and if you're a Bellator fan, you've heard of his name, taking on Cyborg. This just kind of writes itself. You expect to see really thrilling mixed martial arts action.
For sure.
A lot of defensive liabilities, though.
Yes, and it's interesting, you put the sunglasses on him, you get him speaking well, and you get that sort of cocky demeanor, and that adds to it. But the game that he's playing, there's going to be a lot of these guys coming up. Michael Venom Page is a special athlete, he's a great athlete, but so is Groovy Lando a week ago. And there's a lot of these young guys, hands down, lots of movement, very soft core, not all that tight to the ground, very mobile. That game, that's a game you're going to see a ton of guys, because people who were 15 or 14 or 13 started developing as martial arts, watching Dominic Cruz now, watching Stephen Thompson. So it's not an unknown aspect to the game anymore. These have become simple principles that are simple to teach and simple to learn if you start young enough. Even 30-year-old fighters can start developing those aspects of the game, and you see it. I mean, there are going to be a lot of guys like this. They won't all have sunglasses. They won't all have that sizzle necessarily, but this unique style of Michael Venom Page, he's going to be fun to watch in this fight, but he's not going to be that rare in about 6 months.
When you look at these two organizations, the UFC and Bellator, where's the identity? When you look at Bellator, is it just, okay, well, they're the number 2 organization? How do you perceive the number 2 organization in the world?
It's fun to watch fights, and these guys put on good fights. But from a business perspective, like if you look at it and you have some interest in corporate stuff, sure. If you decided you wanted to take on Heinz Ketchup, what the hell would you do? Do you know what I mean? By the time Heinz Ketchup is on everybody's table, what do? It's a tricky thing, but French's did it. I was at the wife's place the other day, and instead of Heinz Ketchup and French's Mustard, I looked, and there was French's Ketchup and Heinz Mustard. They took some of each other's audience. It can be done, but it's a big challenge right now when the UFC has the best athletes. They have $4 million brand new investment and new motivated company. I mean, to try to take a piece of that corporation, to try to take some of their ketchup is tricky. So what they should do is what they are doing. Put on awesome fights, keep getting better, add entertainment. They got real lucky with that Brand Van 3000 guy when he fought, Kimbo Slice, who passed away recently. That fight was a dangerous precedent that they were setting, and they got out of there okay, and I think they will have learned their lesson. I don't think we'll see these dangerous fights.
Yeah, and I think one of the reasons why, if you talk to Scott Coker, this is the hand that he's been dealt. If you talk to him, he's like, actually, as a matter of fact, when I was promoting Strikeforce, Luke Rockhold was my champion. Ronda Rousey was my champion. Nick Diaz was my champion. Fabricio Verdum, Daniel Cormier. I had this serious stable of fighters, and I was trying to create something. Zuf ended up buying the organization. Now we're at square one and we're trying to rebuild. And we're trying to rebuild by, yes, of course, building our own stars. Apparently this Aaron Pico, this young wrestling phenom, 18 or 19 years old, is going to be somebody to watch out for. Michael Page, kind of homegrown talent, but at the same time, they're still trying to attract the Matt Mitriones and the Ben Hendersons. And we know that Rory McDonald, coming off that loss to Stephen Thompson, still in negotiations with Bellator.
Yeah, and that is going to be an interesting one to watch. He is very valuable, and the Hines of the situation, the Hines catch-up, the UFC, they have his contract, they have the right to match. So ultimately, I suspect that he'll be offered a lot by Bellator, but I suspect the UFC will match it.
When you look at what happened, the loss to Rory McDonald, does it hurt his stock at all?
I mean, he's Rory McDonald. He's such a special guy, and he's still young.
That is it for us. Tune in next week, Thursday, July 21st at 7 p.m. Eastern, as we present a 1-hour preview show leading into all the action in Chicago. It will be headlined by the bantamweight tilt between the former champion Holly Holm and Valentina Shevchenko.